Welcome everyone to our 10th episode of Slow Living, a webinar series driven by sustainability rooted in community. Today we have a very special guest, Angie Eng. Angie Eng is the director of Creative Catalyzers, a cultural nonprofit based in the Boulder County area that focuses on bridging technology, sustainability, the arts, and marginalized populations. On today's episode, Angie will be discussing Creative Catalyzers' upcoming project, Dare to Care, which is a fundraiser for a food drive for children across Boulder County. Angie will also be discussing future projects that involve tech, sustainability practices, and the arts and marginalized populations with an emphasis on the history of Creative Catalyzers. So before I give the mic to Angie, I would like to suggest to all the attendees that we will do a Q&A section at the end of her presentation. So if you have a question, please type it into the chat box. And then when we get to the Q&A section of the webinar, I'll unmute you to ask her personally. So without further ado, Angie, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Kevin, and thanks for inviting me to your webinar. This is a great opportunity to connect with a different community that is also related to Creative Catalyzers, because one of the sectors we are trying to focus is sustainability. So we're super excited because we have this new project that was recently proposed by Nick Benny, who's the facility manager at Spark Fund, and he's also a Creative Catalyzer leader. And we were brainstorming ideas on the urgent need for food. And since part of our mission is to foster more culture in Boulder, we thought this is a great opportunity where we can mobilize local artists to make and decorate the crates for collections of food in different venues around Boulder County that are specifically targeted for students who are attending public school that are closed, partially closed due to COVID, and they're missing their school lunches. So even though the local government has received more funding for this, there's still food scarcity in the community. So the idea is also to foster the arts and help out those families who are desperately in need for food. So we're doing a GoFundMe drive right now, and our goal is to raise at least $3,000 to cover the project. And we're super excited because we have a project coordinator. Her name is Asia Abraham May. She is attending Naropa for psychology and religious studies. She's a great young leader who I know from the Shambhala community, where she has coordinated and organized mindfulness trainings, as well as a group she co-organizes to bring more diversity to that community in terms of LGBTQ and ethnic diversity. So we're super happy to have her on to coordinate the project. And the project starts pretty much next week. We'll be working with her as well as the Creative Catalyzer advisors to help her with some teams to find the locations for the pickup and drop off of the food, to find the group we'll work with to build the crates, as well as the artists to decorate the crates, and then the collection. So we'll be working on that with her. And right now we're quite excited because we have the possibility of working with the Naropa Open Studio group that meets on Wednesdays and Fridays. There's a particular group that we might be partnering with, and they're middle-aged people in Boulder County who are brain injured, and they're also artists who are paired up with artist mentors of Naropa. And so it's super exciting at bridging all these different communities of people who have brain injury and artists and the families who are in food scarcity right now. So that's pretty much our project for the fall. We haven't proposed another project because parents and a lot of our leaders are quite overwhelmed with the back to school and managing families and work at the same time. So for now, we're going to focus on the Dare to Care food drive. Yeah.
Awesome. Angie, thank you so much for letting us know that information and the upcoming project. So I have a specific question in regards to the upcoming project.
Mhm.
How many crates are you trying to gather? And then how many artists are you trying to involve within the community?
So we didn't, as a team, we didn't put a set number. It all depends on how many volunteers that Asia is able to manage to gather. And the volunteers, for example, the crates, as well as the artists, like the Naropa studio artists, I think um, they said they have between 20 and 30 people in that group. Um, One component that I forgot to mention, because this is RYM recycling, is the idea is to make work and make art from recycled materials. So the crates would be upcycling some lumber, and also the materials used into decorating the crates are recycled materials. So that's a big component. And to answer your question of how many, I can't really answer your question. It really depends on the scope of our partnerships with the community. It could be anywhere from maybe 10, a small number, to something like 40. But it depends on the mobilization of different teams that Asia is able to access at this time right now.
Absolutely. Thank you for answering that. And then I just have another question going off of that. Are you trying to project Dare to Care out into Colorado as a whole, or are you trying to keep it more locally?
Right now, the organization focuses on Boulder County. We don't right now, for reasons of organization, focus beyond Boulder County. We're a new organization. We started in March, and our first meeting was actually the announcement of shelter in place. So, you know, our timeline has been stretched in terms of our goals of how much we can grow. We'll start with Boulder County, and then who knows, in 3 years, we can expand larger. And if people want to run with the idea, I love it when people are inspired by a small grassroots project that we do and they replicate it elsewhere. That would be awesome too.
No, absolutely. I mean, and that's the entire reason why we do this webinar, is to have individuals like yourself, community leaders that are having these amazing projects, and obviously these think tanks of specific problems going on with COVID and kind of the aftermath and what's still happening, kind of as a overall, I guess you could say, consequence of the fact that we are in this pandemic, we are in a lockdown, and health and safety is number one priority. So the whole reason for this webinar is to get the community the information that they need, connect them with community leaders such as yourself in these certain realms, so they can figure out what they could do to help, and so they don't feel so isolated and they can actually still have that community connection. So I thank you enough for doing what you're doing. So going off of that as well, would you like to describe a little bit more about how Creative Catalyzers came to be, and basically how it's been going so far, even during COVID, just starting out in March?
Yeah, I thought of the idea actually in the fall, winter of last year. I was part of a workshop series called Self-Expression Leadership Program with Landmark. And the idea is to take your leadership skills and have a project out in the community. So I had been wanting to start an organization, a cultural organization, to foster more arts. I also saw like the dominant industries in the community, such as the tech industry and academia, that exists, but somehow, even in a tiny little community of 100,000 people, everybody mostly stays in their pocket of their sector. And I really like this idea of really having a connection and crossover in the projects that we do. I've been working with marginalized populations my whole life. That just is sort of like what I do as an artist and art educator. And so that's a passion of mine. And I met quite a few like-minded people as well, who like this idea of bringing the tech industry and bringing sustainability and bringing the arts together, and then really having like socially engaged art projects that mobilize the community, not just art for art's sake in the museum, but really get out there, get your hands dirty, work with people. We work with artists, but we also work with non-artists. So like our first project that we thought of, it was actually Peter Vitale, one of the Creative Catalyzers leaders, who proposed in our first meeting, well, look, you know, everything's locked down and closed, and this might last, you know, months, years. So let's think of a project where people, maybe if they're walking around, we could put art on the walls. So that was our first project, was to put art on the exterior of walls. And that was a fun project. We got 25 people to participate in making rabbits because it came on Easter. So we posted up rabbits. And then we did a project called Avant Gardens, which was making botanical shrines outside of your house with a recycled object. And so we had 10 participants with that project. That's still ongoing. I had worked on a project called Earthware. That was my own project, but it was under the same mission of Creative Catalyzers to do socially engaged art. And that was working with women, pregnant women in shelters called Mother House, and working with local recycling companies like Green Girl Recycling, Hazardous Waste, Spark Fun, RYM, to help with the materials to decorate the trees. And that's an ongoing project that was commissioned by the Boulder Arts Commission that will be reinstalled in Boulder Central Park in the spring. So for reasons of timeline due to COVID, things are stretched out. So your question of like, were there changes? Definitely. I try not to make hard deadlines, and expectations are very fluid. So when you ask me, you know, how many venues or collection boxes will we do for the food? It's like 10 to 50 or 10 to 40. Or, you know, when I was like, yeah, we can get 100 people, we can mobilize 200 people. It's like, okay, let's start small and see how this idea becomes viral in a positive way. And, you know, and not get disappointed because, right, it's back to school. People are back where we were in March, trying to figure out how to teach online, how to, you know, monitor children as well as work from home. And so people are still in that transitional period. So, you know, patience is really key in terms of running a brand new organization right now.
And I think going off of that, the logistics of it are, because you can have this brainchild that is this phenomenal idea, but putting it in reality, you can't almost overstretch yourself. So I found myself in even specific spots with RYM to where this phenomenal idea, but in reality, it's like you have to hone it back. It's like, yes, like you were suggesting, 100 volunteers would be amazing. Doing 50 boxes would be amazing, but what's actually feasible to make a difference and actually make the impact in reality? So I get it. It's very hard to actually hone in those numbers. And I can only imagine during COVID, having the volunteers and having the resources is just a little bit more limited because people's focus is a little bit more elsewhere. But have you found that funding opportunities in Boulder County have been on the rise due to COVID for any relief in this specific realm of your organization?
In terms of like the specific project like Dare to Care, food scarcity is really up there in terms of the priority. And that was also one of the reasons why we chose that project as opposed to another project that Nick Benny had also proposed, where he thought of a scavenger hunt on the hiking trails, which is a lovely idea to make sculptures along the hiking trail. And that, although that's a great idea, and maybe we'll do it next year, for us to think of catalyzing people to put their energy there might be much harder, especially because of the weather, right? People aren't hiking on the trails. You know, it snowed a couple weeks ago, so we're already hitting the weather change. So we also have to think about what projects can we do even in the winter, and then also what projects can we do? Like we might have to shift it. I even told Asia in terms of the schedule, even though we'll try to start, and we will start in terms of organizing teams this next week, we may not be able to start until December or maybe into next year. It really all depends on where people are at, because we really do rely on the local community. And there's this, it's like a curse and a blessing in terms of like, we don't have any funding. It's all based on individual donations right now and volunteers, is that we don't have like governmental funding where they say, give us your numbers, right? There's also that pressure. As soon as, if we do have a grant, they would say, now you have to deliver because you said you would address this to X amount of people, you know, and it's really hard to do that during COVID, to promise those higher numbers that you would need to hit when you have more governmental funding. Although we hope to have it next year and hope that we're not in such a dire situation, but you know, we'll see, right?
Absolutely. And with being such a new organization and nonprofit, you have to have a track record for a couple of years in order to actually have that funding and be sufficient,
Right.
you know, in the eyes of the government, things like that. So that's also very difficult. So I can totally sympathize with the fact of crowdfunding and individual donations is, you know, it's the necessity starting off, and it's all about the community and getting involved and actually having that communication to where individuals are going to get, you know, very much in tune and more of a emotion within your community, or I'm sorry, within the organization, and actually know what's going on and want to know and want to help. So honestly, I can't thank you enough for talking about Dare to Care and what you're doing. Did you have anything else to suggest on this afternoon's webinar before we sign off?
Sure. I mean, we have the crowdfunding for Dare to Care, but also for larger donations, like if people want a tax write-off, we also have a fiscal sponsor, Boulder County Arts Alliance. If people want to donate to Boulder County Arts Alliance, I mean, to Creative Catalyzers through them, they can have a tax write-off for that donation as well. But
And
thank you so much, Kevin, for inviting me.
is there a specific place that they have to go in order to do that donation?
Yes, I can send you the link on the chat right now.
Absolutely.
And I'll put that in there right now.
Okay. And then we can also email it to everybody as well. We could do a whole informational sheet for Creative Catalyzers.
Okay,
But
great.
I can't thank you enough for being here today. I wanted more than anything for you to be able to talk about Dare to Care, because what you're doing is phenomenal and helping the community, and I can't thank you enough.
And thank you, Kevin, for being our partner and leader too.
Anything I can do to help, I'm there. And RYM and myself can't be, you know, we're so excited to be part of it. And so anything we can do to help, we're going to try.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much.
Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Again, Angie Eng, wonderful human being and leader within the community. So signing off wise, we always like to say, respect each other and respect your mother. Have a wonderful rest. Bye.
Bye.